Hello and welcome back to the Leicester podcast. Still the only dedicated podcast towards a women's team in the Premiership Women's Rugby. I am Jacob, and this week I am delighted to be joined by Huw Griffin, also known as HG Rugby. Huw, how are you? Thank you so much for coming on the pod.
Hello, Jacob. Thank you so much for having me. I was delighted to receive your invites, and I'm very sorry to all of your regular listeners who thought that this was maybe the one podcast that they could get away from me on. But no, I've managed to sand my way onto this one as well.
Yes, Huw is scraping the bottom of the barrel with podcasts now. He's
No.
um, but yes, obviously, you may have seen Huw on a variety of podcasts as part of the Global Gainline Network and other content as well. Obviously, you've got a fantastic Instagram account. So yeah, if for those of the listeners who perhaps maybe aren't aware of you, who don't follow the URC or Welsh rugby particularly closely, I know those are a couple of your interests. Just give a quick intro to yourself and yeah, see where you go with that.
Yeah, so I'm an amateur content creator. I'm on most platforms. Most recently, actually started trying on Instagram and Facebook, which has seemed to go okay. So I'm very happy about that. But yeah, most people probably know me from YouTube, where I cover any and all topics. You know, I probably limit my own growth by not niching in anything at all, which is what you're supposed to do when you're a content creator. You're supposed to niche in something, whereas I talk about anything and everything. So one video might be about Springboks versus All Blacks. The next video might be about the women's Barbarians. The next video might be about a deep dive into Chilean rugby. So it's an exciting and wild ride. If nothing else, my tagline is rugby's untold stories. So that's what I'm always looking for. I'm always looking for a really good, interesting, thrilling story that shares something that's happening somewhere in the world that I think is interesting and worth telling other people about that perhaps you might not hear about if you just stuck to your mainstream podcasts.
Fantastic. And like like myself, you can find Huw on Substack, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, Blue Sky, Reddit.
Not Reddit.
Not
No, I'm
Reddit.
not on
Okay.
Reddit.
No, I'm also not on Reddit. I just yeah,
I
I
find it
assumed
scary.
I I've never had Reddit.
I've
Um,
never had Reddit. It was always the place to me when I was a teenager. It was always the place where all the memes came from that I didn't understand. It feels like it's such a little private. Sorry to all the Redditors. It feels like such a little private club, and it's too late for me to join the club. I've missed it.
yeah. I know that I think Julia and Hattie are on Reddit, so I just assumed you all were, but
No, not me.
that's a gross assumption by myself. But speaking of social media, of course you can follow the Fancast on Twitter, Blue Sky, and Instagram. You can also email ltwfancast@gmail.com. This will be on all the usual podcast providers and also YouTube, Yippee. And yeah, not branching out into TikTok yet. I know Tigers Women are going all out on TikTok at the moment. There's only so many social accounts that myself and Hannah can run at one time. I'm going to stay off TikTok for now. But yeah, if you do want to keep in touch, leave a review. That, as always, that'll be absolutely fantastic. So in this episode, I have invited Huw on to discuss transfers. Is this the craziest PWR transfer off season yet? We are going to discuss that in this episode. Also, some related Tigers women's news, and maybe a discussion on kit. That's what's on everyone's minds at the moment. But yeah, if you have anything else to say at all, please do get in touch on our socials. And yeah, I hope you enjoy the rest of this pod. So, some news. Obviously, there's been a lot of signings for Tigers Women over this off season. That's been covered on the Fancast. I'm hoping to do an episode where myself and a guest will kind of cover the squad as a whole. So I'm going to sort of park signings for a little bit, apart from what we discuss later on the episode. But yes, there was a kit announcement the other week, which has grabbed all the headlines. There's the saying, there's no such thing as bad publicity, Huw. What do you say to that? And the two Leicester Tigers kits out of three that have been released so far by everyone's favourite sportswear manufacturer, Castor.
Well, yes, I am a collector of rugby jerseys. Some people might know. I have recently crossed the slightly embarrassing 100 jerseys mark. They're in my
Oof.
collection over there. And Castor are represented because Castor were the supplier for my team, the Scarlets, for a couple of years. And they're also the supplier of my football team, which is Newcastle United, for a while. So I
Mm.
have Castor garments in my collection. And yeah, they have probably the reputation, it's probably between them and Macron is the most disliked rugby supplier. Now, I actually think I'm wearing a Macron top right now.
I wouldn't I would why would Macron? I've always quite liked Macron.
People don't necessarily like Macron designs, and people sizing is something that people have a go at Macron a
Okay,
lot for. And to be honest, I do think that is fair because the
understandable.
thing that
Yeah.
I'm wearing right now, I don't know who on earth it was supposed to fit. It's long yet thin, and I'm long yet thin. Yeah, but it looks long yet thin on me. So a normal human being would look ridiculous in this. Anyway, so the Castor's designs are exceedingly average, I would say, and uninspiring to look at. But the thing that doesn't come across in the pictures is what they're like to touch and feel and wear. So when we were in the incredible heat wave a couple of weeks ago, I actually sought out one of my Macron tops to wear because it's like wearing nothing, which I don't know. Maybe if you are running around on a rugby pitch, you want. Maybe, they would argue that that's all like super lightweight technology that you want in a sports top or something. But honestly, it feels like if you hold it, it feels like it would come apart in your hands. It feels like it's made of wet paper.
Wow.
So so honestly, at them and with some of the older Macron stuff, it's as much what it looks like to me as when I see it, I know what it feels like to wear on you and to hold in your hands, and that just makes it's like fingernails on a chalkboard for me. It's like
Ugh.
it's that is really the big difference between the likes of Nike and Adidas and Castor and Macron is the quality of feel of the
Mm.
items. So yeah, so when you know that, and then you throw in, I think, what was it, Ben Youngs on his podcast said, who is going to buy this, and what are they going to wear it to? Maybe just down the gym, maybe. I don't know.
Maybe. I mean, there's a couple of things I want to pick apart there. Firstly, you're wearing a Brython Thunder top. Now, I was under the impression that there was no merch to buy of the Celtic Challenge team. So is that a player's top that you're wearing, or
Yes. So Hattie is the expert in this, and Hattie always
yes?
tips me off when she sees things. Our friend Hattie, who is, I think, has a legitimate claim to be the number one British Thunder fan on the planet. So every now and again, the players do put kit on Vinted, and I favorited this top, and I was like, oh, I don't know if I really want it. And then the price dropped to £8, and I was the only person who had favorited it, so I was kind of like, I feel bad. And this is my team that I support, so I should probably buy it. So I did buy it. So I now have two previously player-owned Bristol Thunder items, both bought off Vinted.
Nice. And a second thing as well, I would love to when talking about like the quality of rugby kits and what it's like to play in them. I would love to talk about players sort of the era of like Lewis Moody who came in when you were still wearing these big cotton jerseys. Then you had that famous Nike jersey that England won the World Cup in '03, and this switch to the tight fitting stuff. I'd love to get a player's perspective on that of what it went like going from these really baggy cotton long sleeve tops to these tight fitting tops that you saw in sort of the mid 2000s. So I think that would be quite interesting.
That's a great point. And I did ask a player once, do you notice what you're wearing? And he said no. But that's just one player, and your kind of angle on it of players who kind of crossed over from the long sleeve and collar kind of era into the modern era. Someone who retired in maybe 2010 or something. That would be a really great question to ask. That would be a great bit of insight because I remember seeing players talking about the different balls once. I thought a rugby ball's a rugby ball, but they were talking about Rhino versus Gilbert, and they were like, it's massively
Mm.
different. I was like, how? But apparently it is. And so kind of getting that kind of perspective on the kits as well would be fascinating. Because if you go into like the early noughties and stuff, you had that kind of like cougar kits that were still really heavy,
Mm.
like lots of layers and stuff. And if you put them on, it does you still feel like substantial coats of armor and stuff. And it's not really until the well into the 2010s, second half of the 2010s, that we get the kind of t-shirts basically.
Yeah, I mean, my this is really random to talk about this now, but I'm just gonna bring it up anyway. But for my high school, the rugby PE top there was, yes, it was polyester, but it was very thick, and it was long sleeve. So it was kind of like when clubs started transitioning out of cotton, it was that style. So it was really really thick. So I have experience playing in that at the level of state school rugby in the English Midlands post the Olympic funding being non-existent. So you can imagine how good that rugby was. But yeah, so in terms of the Tigers kits, and I don't really want to go over old ground because obviously, you've seen For the Love of Rugby discuss it, which I was very curious that commentator, and I think she is still playing out for La Rochelle, Anna Caplis, who used to play for Ireland. She she commented on a video that For Love of Rugby did, and it was like, "Oh, this is such a boring take." So I really want to know kind of what Anna's perspective on that, because I really respect her as a summarizing commentator. But with the Tigers kits, on one hand, I really like the principle that the women do kind of have their own away kit, which will be the men's third kit because it kind of adds their own identity. I quite like that. However, what I'm not so keen on is the fact that probably what has happened is that this was originally the away kit full stop. They realised, oh, this isn't going to be very popular. I know, we're just going to have the women wear it as an away kit and give it as a third kit to the men, which I'm kind of less keen on. Again, on the flip side, because of the colour scheme, how often are the women even going to be wearing this kit? I'm not sure. We'll find out. But yeah, I'm not a fan. I am someone who has worn a variety of kits, both as a fan or someone just going to the gym or someone who, did play rugby until I was about 19. So I've worn various brands, and yeah, Castor are overhated, but I think a lot of the criticism comes from genuine places. And obviously, there's loads of theories going around at fans. Is this from Castor's side? Is this from the club side? I'm not going to speculate on it because I don't know. But
It
I
te
hope. Gone.
it tends to be, as my understanding of how it works, when because I did research this once. The brands don't just go, okay, here's your kit this season. They sit with the clubs and the clubs, and they design them together. So someone at the club has chosen this, whether that's kind of they were given options by Castor and they picked their favorite, or whether they just specifically went and asked for it. Um, that one of those two things is a choice of a kind. I don't know whether it's worth mentioning, mate. Tell me if this is offside, but kind of the women's kit being pink, like, is that a bit like is that a
Um,
bit stereotypical? I don't know if that's the right word.
no, I know what you mean. I mean, I can remember a couple of seasons ago that Tigers did they had a pink warm-up kit. Tigers did a couple of seasons ago, and it looked great. It was pink with a big white tiger on the shoulder, and it was worn sometimes as a match jersey by like the development squad and the
Hmm.
academy squad, and they wore it. The senior men wore it for one game against Northampton, but the women never wore this kit, and I was a bit surprised by that because this was post like Barbie film coming out. It was the season after the Barbie film came out, and people were really things look better in pink and everything. On Wednesdays we wear pink, etc. So I can kind of see someone at the club thinking like, oh no, someone's going to say like, oh, you've only just given a pink kit because it's the women's team, and I understand that train of thought, but I did find it bizarre that there was a pink kit and the men wore it once, but the women never did.
Hmm.
And sometimes pink is great. Obviously, Stand Francais,
Well,
pink's
I
yeah.
I was gonna bring that up because I've got a growing collection of Stade Francais jerseys, and the interesting about Stade Francais is they only went pink in the early 2000s. And the owner said that he hated, I don't know if this is exactly his words, but he wanted to push back on the overly macho image of rugby. And he thought the pink kits was a way of doing that. And the pink
Mm,
originally started as the away kit and then switched to being the home kit. And it just grew and became popular, and it's become iconic now. Stade Francais playing pink. So I don't want people to think that I just hate pink because I've got
no.
some pink jerseys that I really, really love. So all I would say is I've already had the idea of when that kit is discounted at some point in January and February, because Castor do like the initial prices for Castor are like 70, 80 quid for something.
£85 is Tiger's kit.
Trust me, by the time it gets to February, March, they'll be charging 25 quid for it.
Yeah.
So when it gets to that point, I did think like maybe I'll buy it and I'll make a video about it. The most hated kit in all of England. And
Mm,
then yeah, it can go in the pink section of my rugby jersey collection.
yeah. Something as well bugs me, and I'm surprised more Tigers supporters don't talk about it, is, you know, Leicester loves to talk itself as one of the big clubs in European rugby, right? It has the biggest purpose-built rugby union clubs ground in the UK, I believe. Definitely in England, and I think in UK full stop. It is the most successful club in Premiership history. It's only Saracens have won more European trophies, but it's not like Adidas with Munster. It's not like Nike with Toulouse. It's not like other clubs that have these, long-standing partnerships with these big apparel manufacturers that really go into like the club's identity when they make these kits. And it's always, I found it really bizarre because Tigers as well are desperate to, they're very reliant on people coming to the ground. They're very reliant on people buying merchandise because it's all self-funded, etc. Well, not self-funded, but you know what I mean. There's no rich
Mm.
owner backing the club. That they don't go more into this, and that they don't have someone like Nike or Adidas making the kit. They had Canterbury make the kits over 10 years ago, and they were good, but that was a 3-year deal. And since then, they've never gone for a big manufacturer.
It's a financial deal as well, though, because
Yeah,
my understanding is that Castor offer the best packages to clubs. So the way that the kit, I'm sorry if I'm teaching you psychics here, but the way
no, no,
that
no, go for it.
kit deals often tend to work is there's two kinds of deals. It's either you get a cut of the um, sales, or you get a wad of money up front, um, and then the manufacturer gets on with selling all the stuff. And I understand that Castor are one of the ones who offer the biggest upfront payments. And we all know that everyone in rugby is desperate for money all the time. So it might have just been a
Mm.
case of they've offered us a load of money, we'll take it. And yeah, eventually, I should imagine that they will move on. Um, this, like I said, the Scarlets were with Castor for a while, and I know that that was a financially motivated decision. We've now switched to VX3, who I love, who I think are doing a great job.
They're becoming very popular, VX3. Very popular.
The quality feel of VX3 stuff is great. I've got a couple of um I've got Scarlet's retro jerseys from the last two seasons. So the last season we were with Castor is that jersey there. So
Hmm.
Scarlet's retro jersey, and the VX3 one from last season is that one there. And in terms of style of design, there's not much in it, but the quality of feel is night and day. And I've just been while we've been talking, I just looked up the Leicester Tigers shop, and your long sleeve retro jersey from Castle being £90 is outrageous.
Yeah.
That's completely. This is just my personal opinion. Other people are free to disagree. I would not pay that amount of money for that garment. I've
No.
also noticed how they've tried to keep the stripes by having darker green stripes on the home kits.
Yeah.
But to me, the Leicester white and red stripes are so iconic. Why don't mess with it? Don't, if it ain't broke.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, most fans agree. I I haven't seen a fan say, "Yep, I'm happy." Fans will buy that kit, but they're not going to buy it at full price. You know,
Exactly.
the and the club, I don't, Castor might not be aware of it as much, but the club are very aware of the demographic of supporters that follow Leicester Tigers. It is not like Bath. It is not like the London clubs. It's not like Quins. The demographic is a bit more sort of lower middle class than upper middle class. Your fans are not going to pay £90 for a top, particularly in this climate. So, yeah, just one quick final thing before we move on to other things, because it talks about the kit for longer than I expected. Something that has become more of a trend, which I find really, really fascinating, is clubs partnering with sort of like fashion brands. So Exeter partnered with Crew clothing.
Hmm.
I love Crew clothing. They're so good. I'm unfortunately not sponsored by them. And then we've seen very recently that Harlequins have partnered with Fat Face. So we're seeing this growing trend of clubs partnering with these companies, which I do find quite interesting. And it made me remember that 10 years ago there was a very brief, but fans loved it. It was a very successful partnership between Tigers and Superdry.
Ah, that is cool.
Yeah, and Superdry made some really nice retro stuff. There was only like three items. There was a top and a hoodie and something else, but a lot of fans bought them. But it was only for like 1 year, and the deal was never renewed, which is really frustrating. But
Well,
it'd be interesting if we're seeing more of these clubs kind of partner with the likes of Superdry, Fat Face, Crew Clothing. I don't know. You could see Bath partnering with White Stuff, can't you? Or Olivia Bonus.
when you said Exeter, I did think my mind went to Fat Face because when I've been to Devon, everyone wearing Fat Face all the time.
Hmm.
Just to let you know, I just quickly Googled it, and the super dry Leicester Tigers jerseys, you can find them on eBay for about 55 quid, which is not cheap, but it's a lot cheaper than the Castor stuff. So maybe that might be a
Hmm.
better investment. Also,
I
final point.
Yeah, go on.
Having re-looked at this controversial kit that we discussed, I am now very worried that we shall get messages from our female friends informing us that it's not pink, it's actually lilac or something.
Hmm.
Um, because obviously women can see more colors than men.
I did. So former co-host Jess Bunyard. She said a lot of things about this kit. But one of the things that she wasn't happy with was that it was like, why have you done this purple color? And our closest rival was the Loughborough Lightning, who obviously wear an African violet. She thought that didn't make sense from that point of view. So I know she wanted to make those views heard. So I'm going to do that now. And they're not the same shades of purple, but I do agree it's a bit weird. Like you wouldn't do a Northampton Saints color as your like away
Hmm.
kit. Um, but yeah, just quickly go back to Superdry. I did have the hoodie and it was amazing quality, but unfortunately my parents bought it me when I was 13 and it no longer fits me. So my mum uses it.
Yeah. I'm
Shout
just
out to
looking
my
at the
mum.
Dulux color chart, and I reckon it's sweet pink.
Okay, okay. I know Loughborough are very insistent their color is African violet. It's not purple. It's African violet. So yeah, in terms of just one quick final thing on the kit, I'm sure this will be discussed on the new episode of our sister podcast, The Rolling Mall. So shout out to David and Millie who are taking over from Elliot and Mike for this season, their first episode, which will probably be talking about that kit for a long, long time, and also talking about the men beating Béziers away in France. That is dropping soon, so stay tuned for that. In terms of other news, I'll just go over that really, really quickly. It is under a month until Tigers women get back underway as they take on Saracens at Matterley Woods, Welford Road in the PWR Next Gen Cup, which was obviously previously the PWR Cup, the PWR Up Series, and the Alliance Cup. People love renaming the name of this competition but not changing the format. So that is on the 19th of September, so that's really, really soon. Gosh, the summer has gone quick. In terms of other things as well, Tigers women are still yet to confirm their forward coach replacement for Ross Bundy, who has left for Exeter Chiefs women. So we'll hear if they do announce that. Sometimes you don't always hear announcements of some of the coaches. Tigers only tend to do the head coach and director of rugby for the women's team.
Mm.
So it might have been confirmed they're not going to announce it. I'll do a bit of LinkedIn detective work and see if there is a forward coach. And then just one quick final thing. So Tigers women are actually back in action this week. There's been loads of content from the Tigers women team about season tickets. Not a lot about this game that's actually happening on Thursday, which is that they're taking on Cheltenham Tigers. Now, of course, if you remember, Cheltenham Tigers were the team that beat Leicester in the Champ 1 North final all the way back at Twickenham in 2023, and the two teams haven't played since. Obviously, Cheltenham have always been dominating the division below the PWR. They've got a close linkage with Gloucester Hartpury. So this game it is going ahead. I did wonder if it was going to be postponed because of what's been happening with the dry weather, but Cheltenham's pitch is plastic, I believe, so this game will be going ahead. I'm hoping to do a review depending on like match info slash video footage. I don't know, so we'll keep in tune for that. But with that brings the end to news and kit discussion. So now for the main bulk of this episode, which is going to be talking about, is this the craziest PWR off-season yet in terms of transfers? We have seen a lot of high-profile transfers to the PWR this season, which I think is making the makeup of the league next season very, very, very interesting. But obviously you spoke in the intro, Hugh, about the fact that turnover in the PWR is tends to be different from men's rugby, and people don't really tend to pay attention to that too much. So, for fans who might not be aware, why is turnover in the PWR very different when you're comparing to the Prem or the URC?
Yeah, it's a fascinating environment, the PWR, in terms of transfers and squad turnover and things, because it challenges our assumptions. It challenges what we think is normal about squad building, squads management, and signing players and things. Some of that is the fact that the PWR is the pinnacle commercially of women's club rugby, and we see more players come from outside to the PWR than we do in any other league. The only one that you can really compare is the Elite One, the Elite Un, as I call it, in France, which I think there's a bit of an open question about how much parity there is between the Elite Un and the PWR. In my opinion, the PWR is considerably ahead commercially, and we see a lot of foreign talent coming to the PWR, but potentially only on short-term contracts. Like we see Black Ferns come in, we see Canadians come in, Alona Mar being the most obvious, famous case of a player coming in for half a season and then leaving again. So we see a lot of that. So we see a lot of big names coming in, staying for a short time and leaving, which is very exciting in terms of talking points and things for us to talk about. But it's not necessarily, if you were to write a book on how to do good squad building and good squad management, that's not necessarily what you would write. I mean, if we look at, compared to a men's team, say, take Leinster, for example, who have made a lot of headlines with big name signings, Geordie Barrett, Rico Ioane, they've come in for relatively short term by their standards, but that's one player. And the vast majority of the rest of that Leinster team is homegrown, compared to what we see in the PWR, where we see a lot of players coming in and a loss of squad churn. And, I'm sure that people could find, plenty of examples of men's teams having big squad turnover, between 10 to 15 players per season. There are teams out there who do it. In the URC, the Sharks down in South Africa always have huge squad turnover every year. We've seen in the Prem, I think Harlequins men have had big turnover this year. Not as big as the women, which is something that we'll talk about in a bit. But in the PWR, it is more normal to have 15 leavers and 15 new signings every season. And not just like wider squad or senior academy or like released players, but like big names, like first team players coming and going quite regularly. which again challenges our assumptions and makes us ask the question, where is the long-term planning for some of these teams in the PWR in terms of their squad management? Are they building steadily? You know, we look at someone like Ealing, who you could say, okay, maybe there's some building going on here, but then Ealing 5 years ago didn't exist.
Yeah,
So if you go back and kind of like count the number of signings these teams have made, which I'm boring enough to have actually done, is you go back to Ealing and you get to 1 year and it goes 50 in, zero out. And you
yeah,
go, what happened there? And you go, oh, it's the year they were formed.
yeah,
So, and they've gone from not existing to PWR runners up in 3 or 4 years with that huge amount of squad turnover. But what the kind of the final kind of curveball to this is the one team in the PWR that doesn't engage in that behavior, the one team that doesn't have the huge turnover every year, that doesn't make huge blockbuster signings every year, is Gloucester Hartpury,
across the Harbury. Yeah,
who have dominated the league since its inception.
yeah,
And that kind of does align with the conventional wisdom of squad building, which is it's better to keep your squad stable and purposeful rather than, in the nicest possible way, just going for the next shiny thing.
yeah. So just for the listeners, I looked at my phone and looked visibly shocked. And that's because we've had some breaking news that Dolly Parton has passed away.
Oh,
So that's sad. But anyway, yes, going on to the what you're discussing there with Gloucester Hartpury. I mean, yeah, they've brought in Gabrielle Vernier on a 1 year deal or sabbatical, which I think is going to be really really interesting. And they've had Zoe Stratford, Titania Hurd, and Sarah Beckett all go over to Sale, and I think we can come on to Sale in a second. So you would say like, okay, that is quite serious turnover, but probably from a Gloucester Hartpury perspective over the last 5 years, that's still quite minimal compared to other clubs. I mean, yeah, you talk about Ealing, they don't have they don't have the likes of Maya Roos and those Black Ferns that were playing for them last season. This year, is that going to affect their ability to be able to repeat a playoff push? I don't know. The thing is with Ealing is that they've done really really well to set up a university pathway behind them. So they're linked with Brunel University, and that's yes they've signed these big players, but I think in the long run they've got that pathway sort of backing them up and everything. So yeah, I mean it's interesting. You see like all these players. So Ruby Tui to Trailfinders, Marlie Packer to Quins, Ellie Kildon to Bristol. Obviously, I mentioned Vernier going to Gloucester Hartpury and Stratford Hurd and Beckett going to Sale. We've had Caitlin Hulse and Tabua Tuanakavadra go to Tigers Women, of course, which I'll get onto in a second. So these are big, big transfers, but Ruby 2 is a short-term deal. Gabrielle Vernier is a season-long sabbatical. House and Tuanakavadra are only here till March until Pack 4 starts, and then they'll be heading back to Australia. So again, a lot, like you said, a lot of these deals are sort of short term, and yeah, it creates a lot of excitement. I think a lot of people have got very, very excited. Where was Ruby Tui going to go? But it's
she got the most out of that content wise. Fair play
yeah,
to her.
I I mean, I have a lot of time for Ruby Tui, but I've spent a lot of time, maybe too much time, thinking about why did you do that video in 4 parts and have Meg Jones talk to you for you to announce that? Why did you put jeopardy that you might not be going to Trailfinders
It's
and have
content though. I
Meg
like it.
Jones?
I think it's fun. I think fair
Yeah.
play, and I think because she's done that off her own initiative. I don't know
Yes.
what management she signed up for, so maybe a manager put her up to it. But I think it's cool.
I th
I've had the very good pleasure of interviewing Ruby Tui very briefly at the
yes.
Barbarians game, and I just came away thinking she's great.
She is great. I've technically worked with her, and when I say worked with her, when I volunteered for the World Cup last year, she was working for Sky Sports New Zealand at the Black Ferns versus Spain in York, and
Ah,
I got her a sandwich. So
that is my
yeah,
granddad. You ever heard of Murray Walker, the old BBC commentator? He used to commentate on the Formula One.
Yes, yes.
My granddad held his suitcase once. That's the
Nice,
story that he
nice.
told. So,
Yeah. But I can confirm, I think that's what I love about Ruby Tui so much is that she's so genuine off the time. She's not one person in front of the camera and then a different person off it. She is the same
absolutely.
to anyone, whether you are a 100 cat red rose or you're a fan in the ground or you're someone like me who's an aspiring sort of media slash sports media professional.
And Chloe from Rugby Voice was there, and Ruby knew who she was. She was like, "Hey, Chloe, what's up?" And then Chloe asked her about Super Rugby LP key, and Ruby was like, "Oh yeah, this game, and did you see that? And did you see that?" So she just rules.
Yeah.
Ruby Tui for president, I say.
Yeah. I don't know I doubt she'll be listening to this, but I do want to say that when she did one of her videos, um, I reposted that on the Fancast Instagram story and put, I'm gaslighting myself into believing that this is Jenny Maxwell, because obviously Jenny Maxwell played for the Barbarians of Ruby Tui, who was Tigers captain last season.
Hmm.
Ruby Tui liked that story.
That's awesome.
And if people want receipts of that, I've got proof that she liked that story. So I didn't think that she would be signing for Leicester, but to be honest, some fans were quite dismissive that Leicester was ever an option. But they would have, out of all the clubs, they would have had the cap for it. You've got the for love of the rugby connection as well. And I was also thinking like, if Meg Jones had done that video and she wasn't signing for Trailfinders, I think the only club that would have worked and that wouldn't have been a big fallout would have been Leicester, who obviously Meg Jones used to play for. But
Hmm.
I don't know if I don't know if there is bad blood between Meg Jones and Leicester. You can't tell with Meg. You can't tell. Um so yeah, so I think I'm so grateful that we are seeing Ruby Tui in the league and that she's still playing. So that's going to be really, really, really interesting.
Is she a starter for Ealing though? Trailfinders?
Off the top of my head, I think Fran McGee is injured.
Ah, okay.
So I think this is where it does work for Trailfinders is that I think Fran McGee is having fitness issues, and she's had fitness issues since the World Cup, which is really frustrating because she's an incredible player. So I think she does. I think she does fit there. So that's my assumption, but I could be wrong. I usually am. Um, but yeah, we've been quite the fan cast has been quite duped a lot this year because obviously when Gabrielle Vernier announced that she was going to go to a club in England, there was the map of
There was the
England,
map. The map was so funny.
and on Leicester there was a rugby goalpost, and you thought, oh my God, is it going to be Leicester? No, it's Gloucester. Uh, but I did really enjoy making the meme that I put, which was R.I.P. to the Gabriel Vernier delusion. This one was actually based on tangible evidence, um, which was yeah, that was good content. So in terms of sale as well, like they've already had a very strong season by their standards. There's a lot of positivity going into there. I thought it was really fascinating. I don't know if you've watched it when For the Love of Rugby spoke with Michelle, the co-owner of the co-owner of Russell and everything, and speaking about women's rugby and stuff. And yeah, they've got Zoe Stratford, Tanya Hurd, and Sarah Beckett all heading back home because being 2.5 hours away from home now counts as home if you live in the north.
Yes, I'm glad you brought this up because when I was growing up, Sale was my closest team. So I grew up in Cheshire.
Ah, yes,
And so
yes.
Sale was the closest pro rugby team to me. And yes, Sale is in the north. However,
It is not the
it
north.
is not the north. Someone pointed out that I'm sorry to mention men's rugby, but when England men played against Fiji, I can't remember which player it was, scored, and he was from the north. And like, it's so fitting that the northerner scores in Liverpool. Like, he's not from Liverpool. Like, it's like,
Wasn't that Guy Pepper who's from
it
Durham?
might have been.
Yeah.
It's like saying someone from uh, Portsmouth scores a try in Exeter, and they're like, "Oh
Mm.
yeah, it's so fitting." Like, what? What are you talking about?
Yeah.
Maybe that might have been a bad example, but still, yes, I'm glad that we are on this podcast confronting north of England racism head on and saying that Sale's not even that north. Like it's north, but it's not like the northest of north. Like
No.
there's quite a lot of England north of Sale.
Oh, that's very controversial for people from Manchester. Um, but at least for Sarah Beckett, like Sarah Beckett is from like Liverpool area, so a little bit closer to Sale than Scarborough or Moulton, which is
She's
fair.
got she's got no excuse to not go and see her mum at the weekend. Um,
What's that
because
reference to?
well, because if she's in Manchester and her mum's in Liverpool, then you can very easily go and do that in a
Oh,
day.
okay. Sorry, I thought that was like some. I thought that was some like really like reference to like family
No, no.
stuff. Okay. Um, because like Squid Rugby have that weird joke about Andy Farrell and Owen Farrell that I don't think works. I thought it was in reference to that. But yeah, cool. Because Sarah Beckett was taught. Her and Holly Aitchison were taught by. Um, oh my God, her name's just escaped me. The Jill Burns. Who was who won the World Cup for England in '94. She was the PE teacher of Sarah Beckett and Holly Aitchison
Ah,
in Liverpool.
that's cool.
So
I didn't know that.
a fantastic person to talk to, by the way, Jill Burns. What a woman. What a woman. Um, so yeah, what do you think to putting aside sort of sales social media teams' poor knowledge of Northern geography? What do you think that? How do you think their team's going to perform this year? Do you think they're a top four contender?
I don't know. It's so unpredictable because the PWR is Gloucester and Saracens at the top, and like the
Yeah.
stats from last year, it was a two-horse race very clearly, and like the third best team in the league, which was Exeter, I think, was a lot less good than those two if you like
Yeah.
all the stats. So in terms of being a top four contender, if 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 the trend continues of Leicester not really contending, then you've got this whole bunch of other teams that could finish in any order. I mean,
Mm,
maybe if Trailfinders are going to start solidifying themselves as a top four team, but you still got Exeter to compete against. Bristol's squad is still amazing. They had a bad season last season. On
mm,
paper, they should always be pushing at the sharp end, but when you got a top four and there's only nine teams, that gets very congested very quickly. So I think that in terms of the recruitment that I've seen, I think that Sales is less scattergun. I think it's purposeful, and we know that obviously the Oranges who own Sale have money to
mm.
burn,
Yeah.
and so we know they won't quit until they've managed to get something. So I should imagine that they will be predominantly heading in the right direction. I think probably top two is out of reach this season is my assumption, but definitely I think third and fourth is gettable for a good maybe five teams.
I think the thing for Sale, and it's a similar thing to Quins as well, is yes, you've signed Zoe Stratford, but like if things follow exactly the same as Abbey Ward, then yes, you will have Zoe Stratford for a lot of the season. I believe they're hoping that she'll be able to sort of play from December time, which because the PWR doesn't kick off till November is
Hmm.
actually not a lot of the season. But you know, um, okay, I appreciate this is two men talking about maternity, but we're still I think in a lot of unknowns, and there's no guarantee that Zoe Stratford's sort of postnatal transition back into playing rugby is going to be exactly the same as Abby Ward. So I think if I was Sale, I think it's when can Zoe Stratford come back in and when she can kind of be coming back in at full speed. I think is really dependent on if they're going to be serious contenders or not next season.
Hmm.
But they've got really good. They've kept that squad that they built last season, which is really really impressive. They've kept most of their Celtic players, despite the fact that we've seen this trend of Scottish and Welsh players going back. They've some of them have left, but they've kept a decent number of them. Like Rona Lloyd has stayed, for example. I think Gwen Hillian Pierce has also stayed. I might be wrong on that, but she was really good for Sale last season as well. So yeah, I think they're looking pretty good. But you're right in terms of like it's interesting as you've got the likes of Quins and Bristol who on paper should be a lot better than what they are. But whether or not they'll be able to do that this season or not, I don't know. But if I think if you've got Marlie Packer at Quins, a bit more no nonsense that might be needed in that team to kind of get them to the level that their team on paper they should be really at the top of the league.
Quins, yeah, the Quins are the big example for me of it because it's like a World 15 almost. I had an argument with someone, a positive argument about who is the Galacticos of the PWR, and some people say it would be Saracens, but I think Quins are in that conversation because if you look at particularly the back line, it's like a different nationality in each position, and
Yeah,
it's like the one of the best players from that nation, like Pena,
yeah,
obviously the clear main
Pena, yeah,
example of that.
yeah,
Kaylee Powell, arguably as well. Um,
yes,
going through that team, you're like, oh my, this is an incredible team, but the performance on the pitch just isn't there. And is that down to just this huge turnover every season? Like,
mm,
imagine you're the Quins coach, and like you don't have these players in the vast majority of that squad. You maybe see for 2 sessions a week,
yeah,
and go one season to the other, you have 10 players leaving and 10 joining. It's actually more than that for Quins. If you have 15 players joining, 15 players leaving, you're like looking at this dressing room in front of you, like it's completely different people. Everything that I said last year. So in terms of the building year on year, you start from scratch every year, near enough. Um, so that you can maybe that goes some way to explaining the kind of what I talked about earlier with short-term recruitment and squad management. Why Quins aren't seeing that return of investment in terms of signing these unquestionably huge stars, like they've signed Cecilia Tuipulotu as well,
yes, yeah,
um, and not turning that into now as a complete other aside point, the kind of casualness in the PWR of players going between Quins and Saracens blows my mind. Like if I was a Saracens fan and I was saw Marlie Packer in
yeah.
a Quins jersey with giving it big smiles, that would rankle me a lot.
She
Um,
out of all of the big signings, Marley Packer is the one where I thought that is the signing I would have wanted at Leicester in terms of how her as a player would have fit the identity of the club and how her tenacity as a player would have been ideal for a team trying to become more competitive at the top flight and sort of bringing that leadership and vast international. She's been playing international rugby since what 2009. Like she's been around for a long time. I thought she would have been perfect at Leicester, and I do question how much her and the Quins' way of playing can sort of coexist.
mm.
So
She's
that
replacing Jade Conkle as well, who was
yeah,
who was like
what a
Ms.
player,
Quins. Like she was like her stats last season were amazing.
what a
So
player.
yeah,
Uh, yeah, so it is interesting. I mean, you talk about that pack. You got Tua Pilotu, Alcal, Aoife Wafer. Just Aoife Wafer is your number 8. So turnover is an issue for Quins. Fitness is obviously an issue for Quins because Alcal played twice last season for
mm,
Quins. Like if
yeah.
they can get both Wafer and Alcal fit, then they're cooking. But there's obviously some kind of fitness issue there. I mean, when most of your squad are part time, S&C is a much harder task. So yeah, and I have question marks about Ross Chisholm. Like, is he the right guy to be getting the best out of this squad? Because he on paper he had an amazing squad, and
Well,
and is he the reason why that wasn't clicking? So I guess we'll find out this season.
well, exactly, and it wasn't long ago that the internet was very divided on when with Eddie Kildown leaving Quins, and it appears that she
Mm,
was shown the door rather than opting to leave. Who's people taking sides between Eddie Kildown and the management at Quins and stuff, and when we consider that the men's team at the moment everyone agrees is being run poorly. It's not outrageous to assume that the women's team isn't immune from that. So yeah, fish stinks from the head and all that.
Yeah, I mean, because the Kildon thing was so long ago now, like we've not really talked about it, but um, yeah, I think that was a very interesting discourse, I think, in the press.
Yeah,
Um,
her the kind of briefing, the counter briefing, because Quins got quite ahead of the story and kind of
mm,
gave a story to the Telegraph about, oh, she's always late and she
mm,
doesn't socialize with the teammates and things. And I did hear on the grapevine elsewhere that Eddie Kildon might not have been the most popular player at Quins, despite her being arguably the highest profile women's player in the world. But then obviously you had Eddie go and do a lot of publicity about her book and talk extensively about her ADHD and how that impacts her timekeeping and things. So it got quite messy quite quickly. But then it all got resolved. It was really weird, just having, like I said, the most, the poster girl for women's rugby just
mm.
openly go on BBC Breakfast and be like, "Yeah, I'm unemployed. No one wants me." Like that was meant, and I don't
Yeah.
know. I think the management, because I looked up, because I'm such a nerd. I looked up her management team, like who's her management, and her
Okay. Yeah.
management has I think they're called Owl or something, something to do with an owl. And I looked up their other clients, and one was Ben Youngs, who's obviously retires.
Okay.
Um, and there was another one who hasn't done much lately, and her, and like I think like half of their most recent posts were all Eddie Kildon. I was like, do you want to just give your girl a ring and just like tell her what to say? And you say maybe don't go on BBC Breakfast and say nobody loves you. You just take it chill. Someone will come on for you, and obviously it's a happy ending because she's ended up at Bristol, which I
Another
think is a
Bristol.
great fit for her.
It's a great fit for her. Yeah. I mean, I've also heard on the grapevine long before this all came out of issues between Ellie and Quins. But I think because I don't want to comment on hearsay, but what I think the Kildon episode does show, and this is kind of relevant to our discussion on transfers, is that the PWR is in this weird state of existence where it is the top competition for women's club rugby in the world, but it is also a semi-pro competition. And effectively, if you're someone like Ellie Kildon, who is on an England contract, okay, if the allegations of what was sort of briefed against her in the press have a ring of truth to it, then okay, that's not great. But also the club doesn't have any control over that, or doesn't have as much control of it as say they would have control over Marcus Smith because they're not paying her,
Mm.
or they're only paying her match fees or something like that. And I think a lot of it comes down to this weird tension that I think is Kildon. I think is just the start of this, where you have high profile players in your league, but because you can't afford to pay them, or they're only essentially contracted, they do have the freedom to do these book tours and media appearances rather than doing team socials because how they've got to make their money.
Yeah, when it was during the period of not knowing where she was going, it was kind of where can she go? And you very quickly realize there were not many options for her at all. Like number one, she can't leave England. Firstly, she would not be able to be picked for the Red Roses, and she would
Mm,
lose a central contract and things. So there's that as well.
yeah,
But there is no like in the men's game, you've got Japan who will just throw a load of money at you. Like they're run by the likes of Toshiba and Toyota and things
yeah.
who are just like £1 million for a rugby player. Wouldn't even notice they'd spent that money. You don't have that in the women's game. So it is a buyer's market in terms of if a big name player suddenly leaves a rival, it is kind of there isn't a bidding war necessarily, because there is the cap on how much they can be paid anyway, which again makes the PWR such an unusual and such a unique case study for transfers because it isn't, you can't have one team hoarding all the best talents. I know Saracens are very, very strong, but theoretically, a, a you can't have lots and lots of big names at one team. You can't have, again, using them as an example, a PWR Leinster.
No. Um, and Sarries as strong as they are because they've had the women's team for the longest time, as Saracens rugby team, they haven't absorbed another club and said, "Oh, you're now
Mm.
oh, hi Elsford, we're going to absorb you, and you're now Harlequins," or "Hi Lichfield, we're going to absorb you, you're now Leicester." It's not like that. They have had a women's team since pretty much the get-go of club rugby, sort of 35 years ago. They're the only club with like a proper academy structure, and they have university ties. So, and they are backed by big money. So they all of those kind of factors kind of turn into that's why Saracens are able to consistently put out a strong squad and keep them. I think the other thing on transfers as well, and I think about this, and this is the problem that maybe Leicester have, is let's say you wanted to sign a an England fringe player or someone who is a top quality forward but perhaps isn't a contracted player. So the example that comes to mind is Simi Pam. Let's say Leicester wanted to sign Simi Pam, been in Red Roses squads but isn't centrally contracted but a very, very good player and make Leicester a better team. Simi Pam, his full-time job is in the NHS. So it's
Mm.
not just a case of, oh, I've got to move to a different part of the world. Is can I move to a different part of England and still do my job, or do I have to, you know, change jobs as well as change clubs? So yes, you do see these high-profile transfers at some level, but at another level, um, it's hard for someone like Simi Pam or Christiana Balogun or is it Liz Craig? I think he plays for Saracens. These players that maybe have a couple of England caps or have been selected by John Mitchell, but aren't centrally contracted players. So if Leicester wanted to bolster their squad that way, it's very hard for the players to kind of agree to that because there are practicalities outside of rugby because of the semi-pro nature of the league. I think people forget that as well sometimes.
That is such a great point, and such a good point. Or maybe that explains why we see players go so casually between Harlequins and Saracens because they don't have to move house. I
Yeah.
know a lot of the players probably live in like shared houses that are owned by the clubs and things, but
Mm.
it's not like uprooting their lives and things. And maybe that's why it is more likely for a club like Sale to sign either Red Roses or foreign internationals coming to the league for the first time, because they can move for rugby because rugby is their work. Whereas if they were trying to sign, as you exactly described there, the second tier of players, fringe internationals, they'd be like, I can't move from Exeter to Manchester just for a 2-year contract kind of thing.
Mm. It took Tess Fury quite a while at Leicester to get a license to work in the NHS because she was a qualified nurse from America, but obviously different qualifications, different countries. So it
Mm.
wasn't a case of simply just rocking up to the Royal Infirmary or the Leicester General, whichever hospital she works at, and just go, "Hi, can you hire me?" No, you've got to do all these qualifications because you're from America.
Mm.
So it's difficult. But I think just wrapping this up on transfers, and I think talking about Tigers, and I do wonder if people are sleeping a little bit on some of the moves that Leicester Tigers have made because I've been impressed with some of the signings they have made, particularly Caitlin House and Tabur Tuanakavadra. But that is a broader trend of signing a lot of Australian players to the team, and yes, particularly House and Ashley Fernandez and Tuanakavadra are probably only going to be here till March, and then they'll go back to Australia for Pack 4. But we are talking, particularly Caitlin House, we're talking a world-class fullback who's going to be rocking up at Welford Road, Matty Woods Welford Road next season. That's exciting.
It's absolutely exciting, and the excitement is needed to be there for Leicester. Obviously, after the last couple of seasons, um, Leicester are the team other than Trailfinders, who, as we described, didn't exist 4 years ago. Leicester are the team that has the biggest turnover of players every year. Um, Now, as you've said there, the fact that they're going to be around for less than a season again brings back to the question of long-term planning, which I think is a fair question to ask. It's tempting to draw the comparison of when Meg Jones was at Leicester and are a contender for the best player in the world at the moment, obviously captain of the Red Roses.
Mm.
But when she was at Leicester, Leicester's results weren't that different, particularly in the last couple of years that she was there. But it's one Meg Jones, but you could now have got three Wallaroos coming in. So, and you've got forwards and backs. So it could be enough to give that lift to the place to get a bit of positivity going. And if it is if because we saw that statement that was released by Leicester as well about how they're redoubling their efforts and their intentions regarding to the women's team. So if this is maybe best viewed as the start of an upward trend rather than
Mm.
immediately arriving at the destination, maybe.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think Tigers will be a better team next season. I think they'll be a lot more competitive. Are they going to get more than 2 or 3 wins? Probably not. But again, rugby is not played on paper.
Hmm.
And, you know, how are Loughborough going to play next season? How are Bristol going to play next season? How are Quins going to play next season? How is Gloucester Harbour going to play next season? Like, are they going to be top two or top four? Like, I'm leading them to be more top four than top two.
Hmm.
So it's because the wheels did really come off towards the end of last season. So it's going to be interesting. Yeah, and again, do I think Tigers will be any higher than ninth? I don't know, but really, I don't think that matters because as long as they're being a bit more competitive, as long as they're actually going to win games this season, and people can see that sort of tangible improvement in the team, I don't think you'll get people. You'll still get the odd like men's fan who'll be like, only 3 wins a season. This is a disgrace. But that'll be a tiny, tiny minority.
Yeah,
So yeah, I think it's I think it's been a really positive off season for Tigers women, and that is the big difference because apart from the first off season when we came to the PWR, the last 2 off seasons have been mired in uncertainty and overhaul and not a lot of communication. This off season, we've had big names come in. We've had really good, consistent communication on the team from the Tigers social media team. So things feel a lot more positive, but we've got to wait for a ball to be kicked.
absolutely, absolutely, completely agree.
Yeah. So yeah, that sort of wraps up our overview on the transfers. And yeah, I think just to summarize, I think it's going to be really exciting this season. I think it's going to be different as well. It's not. I don't think it's going to be a two-horse race between Gloucester Harbour and Saracens. Um, and, and it's. I think having that variety is what the PDPR was desperate for. Really was.
I completely agree, and it's wherever you look, there's talking points. Every team has got a narrative, which is great, and like you said, the craziness is spread out. It's not just a couple of teams, 2 or 3 teams, who are hogging all the headlines. Everybody's got a narrative. Everybody's got an underlying story, and there's a reason to follow every team's progress. And I think probably Sale are the ones that, if you're not a hardcore PWR fan, you might not think about Sale's women's team, but I think they're going to give reason for the wider community to think about them this season.
Yeah, absolutely. So, thank you so much for listening to that, everyone. I hope you enjoyed. Please let us know what you think. Who do you think has been the biggest off-season transfer in the PWR? Do you think Tigers Australian contingent is enough to change the fortunes of the club around? Let us know in the comments. So there is a lot of stuff going to be coming up on the Fancast. Like I said, I'm hoping to do some sort of reaction to the Cheltenham fixture that's happening this week. That is dependent on is there match footage information that's not been confirmed yet. So we'll see how that goes. What is going to be happening up though is I'm going to be having a catch up soon with Tim Westwood, who is the head coach, of course, of Lichfield and University of Nottingham, who obviously are partnered with Leicester Tigers Women as part of that pathway. Always great to have a chat with Tim. So very much looking forward to that conversation as well. There will be a episode which will do more of a deep dive into the overview of Tigers squad going into the season, who are the other key signings as well as those Australians, who are the key departures, because there's been a couple, and is this squad going to be more competitive this season? So that'll come up soon. It will be slightly bitty because obviously the season doesn't kick off properly until November with the PWR. But as ever, like, keep in touch. There'll always be something on the Twitter, Blue Sky, or Instagram. But thank you so much, Huw. That was it was a pleasure to do a podcast with you. That was a really enjoyable chat. That was great.
Thank you so much for having me on, mate. I don't get much of a chance to talk about this kind of a topic in the PWR, so I was massively grateful for the invite.
Yeah, no problem at all. Um, so yeah, obviously, uh, follow us on social media, follow Hugh and on his various socials as well. And yeah, we'll be back soon. So take care.